Good morning. My name is Mark. Welcome to DeepDive15 Scuba Recovery 1. We're doing a wrap-up today. Yesterday I spent about an hour on the boat out in the water, about an hour and a half actually in the water. I found a lot of really cool stuff. The dive was over Pearl Ray, and as you saw in the video, lots of cool stuff, and we wanted to do a wrap-up of that right now. So first we're going to start talking about the actual geology of this. These are some samples. Throughout the lake, I've never run across what are obviously lava flows, and when I first saw the video on the deep dive camera, I wasn't sure of what I was looking at, but now it's obviously, this is you can see the runs. There's some interesting stuff here. You can see that the lava flowed downhill over the granite gravel that we see. And so what I've got is sections of lava rock with the gravel, granite gravel stuck right in them. Really cool. Just really unexpected. But I didn't understand that there was actual lava flows. And I've looked on YouTube at some geologist sites, and what this appears to be is the result. You can see how this guy was actually just flowing over a rock and down. What this appears to be is a result of lava actually flowing into water. So what my best theory is that this lava, this volcanic flow, happened after the lake was here, and this lava actually flowed into the water and cooled, and that's why it bonded with this kind of gravel and stuff. Really neat. But I've got several samples of it here. Thought I would just show you what you actually see when you're underwater. It doesn't often come, you don't actually see very well through that camera. I'm sorry for the shaking of that camera, but it's attached to my head, and I'm trained to sweep my head back and forth for situational awareness, as my dive master used to say. The second thing I wanted to show you is just some odds and ends, some of it pretty cool. Underwater, I ran across a sunken water ski, and it was a piece of wood, a wooden water ski, really old, and when I touched it, the wood just completely disintegrated, but the aluminum fin remained, and you can actually see, if I can get a close-up here, the stainless steel screws that were holding it to the wood are still in place. I'm going to clean this up, and I bet it turns out really neat. Second thing I wanted to show you, you saw me pick this up on the video. This is an old rubber bungee. They use these to hold wakeboards on those carriers on top of their boats. So obviously this guy snapped, and somebody may have actually lost their wakeboard. Wakeboards float, so they probably recovered it, but this sank, so it was on the bottom. The next thing I have to show is, you probably have seen or used one of these as a kid. This is a part of a snorkel, and it's kind of crusty, but I wanted to show you something that's really pretty interesting. If you look close, you'll see that this side of the rubber is thick and this side is thin. Same over here with the mouthpiece. The top of the mouthpiece is still intact. The bottom of the mouthpiece is actually, let's move that out of the way, it's actually missing. And the interesting thing here is that this was laying in the mud like this, about half buried. And so what was exposed to the water has rotted away. What's been exposed to the mud has stayed put. And I have a theory as far as why that happens, is at the bottom of the lake, oxygen is at a premium. There's not much of it. And oxygen is what destroys rubber. So when this was sitting down in the mud at about this level, the top half of this that you see was exposed to oxygen, and it just decayed. But the bottom half of this was not exposed to oxygen because it was buried in the mud, and it was pretty well preserved. So you've got the part that was buried in the mud that is very well preserved, and the part that was exposed to the water, and the oxygen in the water is not very not very good. And it's pretty cool. I thought that would be interesting to show you. But that's true of tin cans, that's true of aluminum cans, that's true of rubber, anything that sits down in the mud. If it goes in the mud, it's well preserved. If it stays in the water, it starts to rot. But I was playing with one of these when I was a kid, so this is likely to be, who knows, 40 years old? Hard to say, but I thought that would be interesting. Last thing on our list to do on this wrap-up is something the fishermen would be interested in. I'm a fisherman, and so I'm interested in this stuff. These are just some of the lures that I found, varying in age. This is a very new lure. Somebody just lost it, probably this season. This is a crocodile made by Jensen. Hook is still in good shape, no tarnish. Someone just reasonably lost that guy. On the other end of the spectrum is something very, very old. This is solid brass, and you can tell its age because the brass takes brass a long time to tarnish, and this is very tarnished. And also, if you look here, that is where the hook was. So everything here being brass except for the hook, which is steel. They make hooks out of steel because they need it to be very strong. You can see the last remaining little nub of where the hook was. So this has been down long enough, not only for the brass to tarnish like this, but also for this hook to completely rot away. So he's very, very old. I'm going to clean him up, and I may put a couple of photographs up that show how these guys clean up. I can often find markings on them that can help date, but I suspect that this guy may be, he may be as old as I am. He's been down there a long time. Some of the ones that have been down not so long, this is a needlefish. You can see it's got some plastic little covering that's on it. They put a plastic covering to protect it. That covering's disappearing. The hook is rusted, but not completely gone. So this is kind of intermediate in age. It'll also clean up nice and go in my toolbox. This guy is a little bit older. You can see that the hook is gone, which means it's been in the water. He's heavy. I believe this is also a crocodile, but quite a bit older, and he'll clean up really well, and I'll have to get those. I can see markings on him. We'll find out how old that is. And when these do clean up, the paint will all come off and stuff, but I polish them to a really bright shine, and the Macs seem to really like those guys. Next on the list is a hammered brass. Again, he's been down there a long, long time. This is brass, chrome plated, and he's got that hammered. You can see it. And they do that to make it look like fish scales, I think. But he's also been down in the water a long time, and there's some markings on here that will probably polish up and come out. And this guy is very, very old. Again, the hook is gone. This guy, his little eyelets are not brass. If you look close, his eyelets are actually copper. I'm not sure if that's focusing or not, but they used to make the eyelets and things out of copper wire, and that's how this guy is. He's much smaller, and I'm really happy to have this guy. So there's the fish lures. They'll probably all get cleaned up and go in my tackle box. This is the lava flow. I think that's just awesome. You can see how that and I can imagine there being a rock here and lava just coming down. But that lava flow out there in front of Pearl Ray is just covered with this. It's all shattered, and I imagine that comes from it being exposed and hitting the water like that. But you can just pick this up off the bottom. And then finally, just the knickknacks. A little explanation about how rubber decays when it's exposed to oxygen, but not when it's in the mud. And this fin, I don't know, but I suspect he's very old too. I don't know how long it takes for a water ski to completely decompose like this one. Some things that I wanted to pick up that I couldn't. There was a fishing pole down there that you saw in the video. Once I touched it, that thing just completely disintegrated, just fell apart into like a fine dust in the water. I touched the rod and it just broke up like a really thin tin can. Or not the rod, the reel. It just broke up like a tin can. And what I basically had was a handful of nylon fishing line. That was the only thing that survived. I'm going to go back to that spot, and I'm going to go with the idea of just collecting lures. My dive knife worked pretty well for me in when I would get tangled in the line and breaking it, or cutting this kind of thing. But if you want to get down in an area where there's a lot of fishing line, you need to have a pair of scissors. Scissors work much better than this because you don't have to hold both ends in your hand and pull. You can just snap and just clip it real well. So I'm going to go down there with a pair of dive scissors. I've got a nice stainless steel pair, and I'm going to go just to collect lures, and I'm going to clean up all of that fish line that I can find. I'm going to bring a spool so I can just wind the spool up rather than just trying to loop it in my hands, because when you do that underwater, it gets really, really ugly. It's all floating around you and stuff, and it's just it's a tangled trap. It's really ugly. But if I can bring a spool down there where I could just take the line that I find and just run it on the spool, it'll keep it all in a nice confined place, and when I get to the lure end, I can just cut it with a pair of scissors and put it in my pocket. But that's probably be my next dive, is back out to that spot to just do this. There were hundreds and hundreds of lures down there, especially on that old sunken dock that's down there, just tangled on it like spider webs everywhere. And I don't know, I'll probably bring home 100 antique lures from that. I'm really looking forward to that. But until I see you next time, thanks for watching the video, and remember, subscribe to the videos. If I can get to a certain head count of subscribers, I can start to make a few pennies on this and help pay for gas and stuff. So thanks again. We'll see you later.